Pick your class and
earn your battle points.
Because it's time for the Star Wars Battlefront podcast.
This episode of the Star Wars Battlefront podcast is brought to you by our patrons on Patreon. Head over to patreon.com/Battlefront podcast to help support this show. We're also brought to you by our PayPal supporters, paypal.me/tie-dye-sheep, TYEDYESHEEP.
Welcome to episode 108 of the Star Wars Battlefront podcast. I'm your host, Sage Goodwin, joined by my brother and co-host, Sam Goodwin.
Hello there.
In this episode, we'll be going over the Heroes vs. Villains game mode in Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Let's get started.
Before we get started, we want to just say this is episode 2 of our daily episode schedule. Celebrating the launch of Battlefront 2, we are doing daily episodes for at least a week. We'll see how that goes, and we may continue it. We may do 3 episodes a week. We may do 2 episodes a week, but just let us know, battlefrontpodcast@gmail.com or our Twitter @SWBP podcast, how you like the new format, and we can make changes through that. This episode is brought to you by our patrons and PayPal supporters, patreon.com/battlefrontpodcast, paypal.me/tie-dye-sheep, TYEDYESHEEP. Not be able to do all of this and upgrade our studio if it wasn't for the support that we've been getting through our podcast. Just give us whatever you feel we deserve through doing this episode. Now, let's get into Star Wars Battlefront 2 Heroes vs. Villains. Let's get started with what Heroes vs. Villains is.
So essentially it's Hero Hunt meets classic Heroes vs. Villains of Battlefront 2015. So it's 4v4 heroes and villains. Every so often there is a target picked, and your objective is to kill the target. And after you kill 6 targets, then either or side wins.
Yeah. So you start off, you get to pick your hero or villain, depending on which side you are, choosing out of the 7 heroes on each side. Randomly, I think it's around every 2 to 4 minutes, a target is selected. And once that target is selected, if you are the target, you need to survive as long as possible, preferably until the next hero target is picked. Or if you are not the target, try to destroy the target as fast as possible,
while defending your team's target.
Yeah. So basically it mixes Hero Hunt with Hero Blast. And Heroes vs. Villains worked very differently in the first game.
In that case, there were, depending on if you were on the Outer Rim rotation, it was 3v3. And the main objective was just to kill all the villains off or the heroes off, and then you win. And that also had troopers that were spawnable. In this one, it's strictly heroes.
I was not a fan of the rounds in Battlefront 2015's Heroes vs. Villains. I think it really slowed down how everything worked, and now it's kind of like an in-game round system. So every 2 to 4 minutes, possibly more, a new target is picked. Which I really enjoy that, how it's not saying, okay, we're going to stop the gameplay and then we're going to pick the targets. It's no, you're going to continue fighting and then we'll pick the targets for you.
Definitely not how I think they would have done it, just the style of the gameplay, but I really think it works for this game.
Yeah, definitely. And now let's move on to the hero gameplay. Before launch, they were really promoting a thing called rock, paper, scissors, where one hero would beat another hero who beat the hero that you just picked. So basically, Darth Maul's rock, and then Han Solo is paper, which covers rock. This is all hypothetical. This is not real. We need to do way more research before we decide that. But it's kind of like that. Each hero would be a different ability in the rock, paper, scissors game. Do you think it captured that?
So far from what I played, I do not. But, I still haven't experimented with every matchup. So I haven't played Rey against every other villain in a 1v1 to see which one is optimal and which one is the worst matchup. So it's still up in the air for me at this point.
Yeah, it's The heroes and villains really match up well when they're 1v1. I think it's very even across the whole landscape. If you're like I destroyed Kylo Ren as Han Solo 1v1, like completely decimated him. And other times Kylo Ren would completely decimate me as Han Solo. So it's very even depending on how you play it. I definitely think they have the ability to have a good rock paper scissors kind of thing. Just need to play more with that. How do you think each side of Battlefront 2 heroes match up?
I personally think the villains are more powerful, but now that I think about it, it should be that case. But still, once in a game of like heroes versus villains, where you can't rely on your troopers as backup, it becomes just a battle of skill and skill alone. Because if you have players of the same skill amount, obviously the villains are going to have the edge. But still, if you play the objective team and not split up, the heroes can easily win.
One of the problems I had with heroes versus villains, it kind of felt empty. Like, I think the maps are way too big. A couple of times when I was the target and I wanted to just go and try and defeat the world, it was hard to find the other target or other heroes and villains. So, like, I think 4v4 is a little too little. I mean, 5v5 is pretty nice. 6v6 would be perfect, though.
I just hope they expand the amount of heroes and villains
As like each season comes on. Definitely, if they don't adjust the number of heroes by the time that the Last Jedi DLC is out, with adding Finn and Phasma, I would definitely be surprised, because I would hope that they change the number of heroes and villains on each side to be 5 or 6. That kind of gives you'd also have 2 more heroes to kind of switch out between. So it'd be interesting to do that.
Yeah, and that was another critique I had on Battlefront 2015, is that they never expanded. Like, I thought they would do 6v6 heroes versus villains eventually.
But it always stayed at 5.
It always stayed at 5, at 4 actually at most.
Yeah.
But now that this game's out and the season pass is not splitting the community, I would think they would have started out with a strong amount of heroes and villains, which is still more than the base heroes versus villains of the last game. Still, it seems like not enough heroes and villains to play at the same time.
So I'll definitely be interested to see how that changes depending on how many heroes and villains we get through the seasons. After a short break, we'll get into some of the maps that we've played and how that affects the gameplay, as well as our experiences and a couple of techniques on how we play. You're listening to the Star Wars Battlefront podcast, a podcast from the Tie-Dye Sheep Entertainment Podcast Network, a network dedicated to bringing content as great and as weird as the hosts. If you'd like to support us on a Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/battlefrontpodcast. You can donate $1 up to $10, and we have different tiers for that. So if you'd like to support the show and get some exclusive content, because we'll be doing bonus shows there, you can support us through that link. And at $1 per month, you have the ability to come on the podcast if you so desire. Battlefront 2 has a lot more planets and maps to choose from.
Indeed.
I've rarely played the same map twice in a row. I have not played the same map twice in a row unless it was to switch sides.
Yes.
So the heroes versus villains maps that I've played is Camino, Jakku, the Death Star, and Theed. So
it wasn't on Theed. It was like in episode 1. Wasn't that on Naboo where Darth Maul's in the?
It's the room where Obi-Wan and
Darth Maul fight.
Qui-Gon and Darth Maul fight. Which is awesome. It's the one that we see Darth Maul and Yoda fighting in. Have you been playing any other ones?
So far, I've just played those base maps, which nothing to complain about. They're all awesome maps.
Yeah. I want to play on Mos Eisley because that would be a huge callback to Battlefront 2, the original. I just haven't been able to get into a match on Mos Eisley, and I really, really want to.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those maps to where Boba Fett camps all the time if he's the target. I actually think there was another map. I think I played on Takadana, Heroes versus Villains, now that I think about it. So there's a wide variety of, maps that we haven't quite explored yet in Star Wars games.
It's the amount of content that is in the game right now is, I think it's the sweet spot. I mean, it's not too little, that's definitely for sure, because it never feels stale, which was it was a problem in the first game, to where a lot of the times you'd play similar maps or the same map in a smaller rotation. That's definitely not the case. When you play Jakku, the next match you're going to be playing on the other side on Jakku, but after that it's going to be a completely different planet. Okay, now let's move on to some of our experiences. So Sam, basically the first thing we did with Battlefront 2 was, one, play the arcade mode, played like 2 rounds of Strike, and then Heroes versus Villains basically the rest of the day.
Which is a good balance.
Yeah, we played every map and game mode. We played every game mode, and then we basically was like, I want to get some practice on those heroes. So we did.
Yes, and Heroes vs. Villains didn't disappoint. I mean, it's a really fun game mode. I don't want to say short, but it's just the right amount of time.
It depends. If you're against a really good team, it can be really short. If you are a good team and you're against another good team,
it can be long.
It can be
grueling.
long. I played a 30-minute match one time.
I played a quite extensive map to where I was the target and we were camping in a room with my team because we were down 4 targets.
Yeah, so you're on your last 2 health.
Yeah, and then we slowly brought it back to where we were both at 1 target, and it was actually they were camping while we were camping, so it was one of those situations which never ends well.
Yeah, it really depends on who's playing. Depending the time of the matches, it really depends on who's playing. If you're both really good teams, it could be fast, or you could be both strategic teams, and it's just going to take forever. Which I don't have a problem with. I enjoyed every minute of that 30-minute match I played. Because every now and then, I would go in and try and get the target. I would fail, and then be like, okay, they're right there. I'm going to go around the back and try and defeat some. It worked several times. Which it's super fun when you get to do something like that. Just keep on adapting depending on what's going on.
And it's a really team-based mode, which, as it should be, and as the previous one tried to be, but really didn't turn out that way. Like, for you to win, you have to be with your team.
Yeah, it's not, I'm just going to go out there and destroy everybody else. It's, you need to stay with your team and kind of be strategic about it. If you are in a party and you're talking with everybody on your team, it is so much fun.
And it's better gameplay-wise as well.
Yeah, you're just like, go over there, I need health, help me out. I know that's what you were playing with Spartacus Inc. And you were strategically saying, okay, I'm running low on health, and he'll come over as Yoda and heal you.
Yes.
Which is such a fun way to play the game.
And I'm not sure, the villains don't really have any healing villains, Like Yoda's kind of he actually has a really good ability.
Healer.
He has a really good healing ability as well.
Yeah.
Like, it boosts you like 300 health.
It's super effective when you're playing heroes versus villains, because a lot of the times you will be running low in those clutch situations where you want to keep it going, but you need some more health. So I've definitely been enjoying my time in Battlefront 2. Heroes versus Villains was super fun. But that's all for this episode of the Star Wars Battlefront podcast. I'm your host, Sage Goodwin.
I'm Sam Goodwin.
You can follow us on Twitter at SWB Podcast. If you would like to support us through Patreon, you can head over to the link battlefrontpodcast@gmail.com or PayPal, paypal.me/tie-dye-sheep, TYEDYESHEEP. We have a Discord. Head over there. It's a super fun place to be. Just hang out and talk Battlefront and what's going on there. If you'd like to help us out without leaving anything or without using any money at all, you can leave us a review on iTunes. Super helpful. We would really, really appreciate it. We have a YouTube channel, the Star Wars Battlefront Podcast. If you search that, you'll be able to head over there and watch even more content. And if you'd like to contact us through email, it is battlefrontpodcast@gmail.com. You can listen to the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. As always,
Thanks for listening.
and may the Force be with you.
Somewhere close.
Bad luck, pal. That armor's looking rusty.
I can't pity you.
Why did I volunteer for this?
Right there. Where are you? I can feel them.
Ready for this?
I feel his rage.
Come on!
There's danger. Close by.
You cannot.
You don't want to fight her.
call you